Alright, boils and ghouls. So we are going completely out of order with the order I watched these movies, but Baghead from 2023 on Shudder. This was a random watch. I never even heard of this. And I was looking on Shudder. I saw the name, and it's just one of those names that instantly is going to grab your attention. Baghead. So then I look at the description. A woman with a bag on her head that lives in the basement of some. I said, I'm in. Like, it's one of those synopsises that just grabs me instantly. Now, if anyone hasn't seen Baghead yet, I recommend it. Go out and watch it, because I'm going to pretty much turn this into a whole spoiler discussion, because I enjoyed this so much. Probably going to just throw it on again. But the acting is good for the most part. The premise, we've seen things like this before. I mean, very, very strong vibes of Talk to Me from last year. And any time that there's a movie that has any type of creature or non-human living in the walls of an establishment, Castle Freak is immediately the film that comes to mind. Even if it has no influences from that movie, I'm just going to think of Castle Freak. Much like Barbarian from last year, but that was very Castle Freak. But very much like Talk to Me, this movie falls under the category of movies I like to call dive right-ins. And by I like to call, I mean I just made that up. But we're going to stick with it because that is an actual category of movies that I keep in my head. What I mean by that is, you have to accept the premise for this movie right off the bat and just be on board and not question anything, which you know is very hard for me, especially with certain movies. Now, the premise for this movie is this girl, Iris, inherits this rundown bar from her father, who she was estranged from for years of her life, pretty much most of her life. And with the deed to this pub comes a responsibility. And that responsibility is the woman in the basement behind like a enclosed, tombed up wall who can make you see your dead loved ones. But she gains control over your mind the more you use her. So if you've seen Talk to Me, obviously that probably sounds very similar. The whole reason that you have to dive right in with this premise and throw logic to the wind is because this girl and her friend, they accept this way too quickly. The first time they see this woman, they don't think anything else aside from what this guy is telling them, that she can show you the dead. They don't think this is some sick guy that brought them down to this basement and he has a tortured girl down there. They don't run to her and say, are you okay? Or nothing. They see someone come out of a wall in the basement with a bag on their head, and they don't show a shit of concern. So you have to throw all of those questions away and just accept, okay, they're just going with what this guy's telling them. And then they do see weird stuff for themselves as time goes on. They don't show any type of hesitation or questioning in their mind, any of those things I just mentioned, or maybe this person needs help, or nothing. So you just have to say, all right, we're starting here, let's go. And I will say, compared to Talk to Me, where they found this hand that allows them to summon demons to take over their body, and the first thing they do is use it as a party game instead of like some scientific breakthrough or anything good. This is a lot more believable, this movie. So this is a lot less of a dive. But let's deep dive into Baghead. So the opening is cool for this. We see who we will find out is Iris, the main girl's father, who owns this pub, lighting himself on fire, trying to kill himself and burn this place down. But the girl in the basement ends up putting the fire out, and he just ends up killing himself, after leaving a videotape with instructions for the next owner of this place, because the name on the deed is who this woman in the basement listens to. So she does listen to an extent, and you can't control her to an extent. But then if you use her to, conjure up and see a dead relative, then the more you use her, the more power she can take away from you, is basically what I took from this. And she can drive you crazy. One small thing I don't care for in this movie is the demonic black eye look that they give her whenever they try to show the difference between it being a dead person, a dead relative that somebody brought back using her powers, versus it being the actual woman in the basement taking control again. And that's how they kind of show it, is with these demonic eyes. doesn't look great. It reminds me of, what the hell's that movie? The Lazarus Effect? Reminds me of that. And I didn't like it in that either. Another positive, the girls here, they got British accents. I love British accents. Another positive. Yeah, we just hand positives away now. So Iris, there'll be bloopers, and her friend Katie, they're together. We see Iris get a phone call and to tell her that her father passed away, which Katie, her girlfriend, didn't even know he was alive. She questions her, says, I thought your father was dead. She says he is now. So she goes, identifies the body, and then she ends up inheriting his pub with the girl in the basement. I do really like the setting, though. The whole rundown pub, it looks really nice, but yet eerie at the same time. And the whole basement just looks the way it should. Just old, decrepit, damp, where you would expect a bag lady. Sorry, Baghead lady. Apologies to the bag woman out there. So Iris goes by herself at first to this pub, and she's shown around by, I don't know, the guy in charge of the father's will, whatever. And then Katie, her girlfriend, meets her there like the next day. But that night that she's alone there, the first night, this guy, Neil, creeps up inside this place, doesn't announce himself or anything. He's just creeping around just for a jump scare. And then this is what I mean. This guy offers her $2,000 and says, can I see her? She has no clue what this guy's talking about. And he says, the woman in the basement. Right away, for me, that would trigger an alarm or two, right? For most moral people. But he goes on. He says, I'll bring you double tomorrow. So $4,000 to see this woman in the basement. And he says, I know what to do. I'll just take the money. I know what to do. And then this girl doesn't look into it at all. She doesn't call the police. She doesn't tell anybody except for her friend Katie. That's too unbelievable for me. But you have to push through that to enjoy this movie. Wouldn't you at least, I know I'm going on this, but wouldn't you at least check the basement? She doesn't even check the basement. She doesn't even call out, hello, just to see if there's a response. Maybe this psycho guy, maybe her father was into human trafficking or some shit. No response from this woman at all. She just says, come back tomorrow with the rest of the money. And then she looks into it the next day. And it's not even just that. There's a whole bunch of more questions I have. All the people that knew about this, it seems like there's a decent handful at least who knew in this area that for $2,000 you can go to this pub in the creepy ass basement and talk to your loved ones through this weird baghead creature. None of them were related to cops or police or firefighters or anything like that. That this word on the bag woman in this pub never got out to anybody interested who came around sniffing around this place. And they didn't even bother to make a secret handshake or lingo for this. The guy just asks, can I see the woman in the basement? And you're telling me not once when the pub was operating, there were people drinking there. There's always people drinking at a pub. I don't care how run down it is. Nobody got drunk, slipped down the stairs, stumbled into that basement, saw the bag woman. All right, this is turning more into a video on how you can't keep a secret that you have a bag woman in your basement. So then Katie, the girlfriend, shows up. And she does show some resistance to the crazy ideas that Iris is saying. She says you invited a potential psychopath back to the bar here, the guy Neil from the night before. So she has some common sense. But she lets this bullshit from Iris go right past her. She says, maybe I think my dad was having people pay, money to go down in the basement and have a scare, for laughs. People are going downstairs paying $2,000 for a scare at an old rundown pub. And she just accepts that answer. I know it sounded like I'm shitting on this movie, but I really did enjoy it. So newer subscribers know this is me showing my love for a movie. Alright, fair enough. She didn't have the key the first night there to open the basement door to call out. Still, though, she could have banged on that door. She could have at least said hello from the other side of it. So she still didn't try at all. But the atmosphere is great throughout this movie. Like I said, it's very eerie because of the setting. And this whole first scene, when they finally go down into the basement for the first time, is pretty suspenseful. I actually really love the way that they shot Baghead coming out of the wall for the first time. And you see her hands come on the side of the bricks, and she slowly comes out of the hole. All of that looks really cool, and the way that she moves is really creepy. The design is cool. It's not that original. You just take Jason's sack and throw it on Sadako's body, and that's pretty much what you got here. But it's effective. And then Baghead starts going after Iris and walking towards her, and she starts saying no, like, stop, and she listens. And this is when she realizes that she obeys her. She's the owner, so Baghead obeys Iris. And again, this guy says, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, you own the place. Tell her to sit in the chair. And she just does it. She says the price just doubled and then tells it to sit in the chair. Again, they don't know if this is some poor woman that's been trapped down there for years. If a group of hoodlums, kidnapped this girl and they've been keeping her down here for the last week for their own kicks and giggles. I don't know. But she has no questions. And even outside of logically thinking about it, they don't even seem that terrified by the thought that this is genuine what they're seeing. That there's some creepy ass woman in their basement that can shapeshift into a dead person. So there's really no reaction from any of them on either side of the argument. Oh, let's not forget, not just sit in the chair, they strap her in the chair. So then this guy Neil ends up sitting down right across from it and gives the locket or something that belonged to his wife, but originally his mother, which he doesn't realize till afterwards. And Baghead morphs into his mother, who killed herself. And they don't know about the 2-minute rule at this point. I think he said he forgot, like he heard it, but he forgot later on in the movie. But they don't know about it, the girls. And after the 2-minute mark, this demonic version of your loved one, his mother, basically just tears you a new asshole emotionally. Then we get a scene that's pretty much straight ripped out of Drag Me to Hell. When Baghead, as Neil's mother, topples him over and then just shit starts coming out of her mouth. I don't know what it is, some type of vomit. It looks just like the embalming fluid coming out of Mrs. Ganush from Drag Me to Hell. So after that whole event, they go upstairs, Neil leaves, then the girls decide it's probably a good idea to watch that videotape with the instructions, right? And we get to see the full version of her father's tape that he was recording at the very beginning, and starts to give a little more context about what this creature is, but not really. It gives the 2-minute rule. He says don't use her or she will control you and start to drive you mad. And her one goal is to get out of the basement. So no matter what you do not let this girl out of the basement. Just because I'm a skeptical believer, I want to believe, but I am very skeptical of many things, I would not be convinced. I would think that my dad and a friend are putting me on with some type of grand prank, and that's what this is. I would not believe I had some actual supernatural woman with a bag on her head in my basement. And then she gets pretty much a big gut punch watching the end of the tape, and her father says, like, I had a family, I had a daughter, and she realizes the whole reason he's been out of her life. Her whole life is because he's been tied to this curse with this bag woman. Been having an affair with the bag woman, can't be no daddy. But I do like how they show the almost instant power that Baghead has over Iris. She's immediately just thinking about the money that Neil says is of no question, doesn't matter, he has a ton of it. Money's of no concern. And she starts saying, just for a few days, like, we'll do this for a few days, we'll make money, you can study law, I can open up an art studio. So I like how they show that immediately upon probably just being there the first night. This Baghead woman, I don't know what to call her if you haven't realized at this point, has this control over her and starts exerting it pretty much immediately. This has nothing to do with anything, but Iris, whenever, it's a rare name. You don't hear that often, even in movies. So every time I hear Iris in this movie, I keep thinking of Would You Rather, with Jeffrey Combs and Brittany Snow, because that's the only other movie I can think of right now that has the name Iris in it. So then that night, the three of them go back into the basement, and he gives something to Baghead that he's damn well sure belonged to his wife, not his mother beforehand. And it turns into his dead wife, who he's been saying this whole time that he just wants a chance to say goodbye and all that lovey shit. And turns out he just wants to ask her who she was banging before she croaked. That's what he's spending all this money on, to talk to his dead wife about. And he knows about the 2-minute timer, and that he only has 2 minutes with her, and yet he waits till like 25 seconds left to drop the question and say, who is it? I know you were seeing somebody. Then we get a great scene, and this feels deserved because they build this up. After the 2 minutes is up and they're saying, Neil, we're done, shut it down, she turns all evil and starts saying, I just didn't want to be with you, there was nobody else. And then she cowers in the corner, and then Iris goes over to her, and she turns around with this hideously creepy face. That looks very good. Then she, like, crawls on top of her. The lights are, like, strobing and, like, going on and off. That whole scene is done very well. And Baghead, she lays some wisdom down on Iris before she goes back in her hole. She says, don't you realize it yet? We're both prisoners. She has this whole dream that she goes into the basement, she sees her father, and the dad starts ripping his face off. It looks alright. It doesn't look great, but it doesn't look bad. Then it turns into a sack on his head, and she starts choking it and saying, what did you do to my dad? And it turns into her. So she's choking herself, and then she wakes up out of his dream actually choking, and she has to run to the bathroom. So Iris is on the floor at this point, being choked by her necklace, and Katie shows up at just the right moment to save her life and cuts it. This is where it kind of slows down for me a bit, because then they have a little fight between them, and Katie ends up storming out, but she goes trying to find the previous owner to see if she can find out a way to stop this thing and get Iris away from this place, because apparently if you try to leave, like her father did, it caused her mom to get sick, and sickness and death follows you everywhere, so you can't leave. So she's trying to figure out a way to sever her ties with this place. And then Iris goes and talks to Baghead and sees her father, and it's alright, but it definitely slows down a little before the end. I do have to say, though, I really like the father's performance in this movie. I forget the actor, but I think he does a great job. Nice touch that she tries to burn the deed, and you can't. It just sits there on fire, then the fire goes out. Alright, so then we get the explanation of what this thing is. From Katie going into the basement, she's there alone, she can't find Iris, and then she gets killed by Baghead. But she brings back the previous owner, because he goes on to say there was an ancient brotherhood who found this woman who can conjure the dead, and then they were abusing her power, and then they did a dark ritual, and they entombed her on this property, and then they tried doing it again, and abusing her power again, and again they got fucked up from her, and etc., etc. Didn't have to be here. I wish they just kept it. There's this creepy woman with a bag on her head in the basement, and for some reason she's able to evoke the dead and shapeshift. But once you hear the explanation, I mean, it's fine. It's fine for the type of movie this is. I just think it would have been a much better decision to go the other route with it. So Iris's phone wakes her up, and it's Katie's voice, but it's not Katie, and it's very obvious, and draws her down into the basement, and she breaks another cardinal rule that I never mentioned. The father said in his instructional manual, don't ever go on her side of the hole. Don't go into her cave dwelling. But she needs to save her girl, and she jumps right through that hole, and she finds her body. And the effects on her body look cool. And Baghead has the stupid black demon eyes, and she's talking down to Iris as Katie. Really cool shot of Baghead, like, upside down on the ceiling of this cave, and just her hair is, like, coming down, and she's looking all creepy. Then we have the ending, which I still don't know how I feel about this. Neil is in the basement talking to Sackhead, whatever the name is, trying to strike a deal with them, basically. I want to be the owner of this place, and puts his name on the deed. But then finds out that he has to kill Iris in order for her to be dead and her not to be the owner anymore. I don't see what one has to do with the other. If you were to sell this place, what if Iris never went down in that basement at the beginning of this movie? never found the woman and flipped the place in 1-2 days. Yeah, it's unrealistic, but whatever, go with it. New guy puts his name on the deed, who bought the place from her. He's now the owner. She goes on her merry old life. Yeah, sickness and disease might follow her. She'll have no idea why. But this new owner is going to be responsible for the bag woman. So I don't know where they join those two together, that she has to be dead and his name has to be on the deed in order for him to be the new owner, but he tries to kill her and he succeeds. Then he brings her back because he still can't figure out how to get his name on the deed. I guess you can't just sign it on. It's some supernatural element to it. So he brings her back in order to get his name on there and figure it out and finalize this deal. And then she just lays this technicality down saying, I'm still the owner. Iris is the owner. She's dead, but you just brought her back through me. Now she's her own owner. Bag lady owns herself. And she just walks out the place after killing the shit out of Neil. Cool effects when she breaks all his fingers, like with her force. And she leaves and the whole building burns down. So now she's not tied to that location anymore either. And this is why you don't keep a woman with a bag on her head in your basement. That is Baghead from 2023. It's fun. It's the movie that I can watch and have this type of fun with. Poking holes and just laughing at a lot of stupid stuff. But there is some effective stuff in here. So it's a decent movie. Alright guys, hope everybody's having a good morning, afternoon, or night. I will talk to you soon. Take care everybody. So Iris, and that's how it should feel in a basement with a baghead lady. I actually really love the way they shot this bag woman coming out for the first. It's a whole bricked off wall, but one little thingy that's not. I know it sounded like I didn't. She could have, at least from the other side. This Baghead, back in olden times,